Nachdem wir vor kurzem Fab5 zu dem Thema Verschwörungstheorien gemacht haben, haben sich viele von euch in den Kommentaren gefragt, gibt es Aliens und UFOs vielleicht wirklich? Darüber wollen wir heute ein bisschen spekulieren und dazu habe ich mir einen ganz besonderen Gast eingeladen, namentlich Nick Pope. Nick hat sich gekümmert 3 Jahre lang beim britischen Verteidigungsministerium um diverse UFO-Projekte. Er kann also quasi aus dem Nähkästchen plaudern und jetzt momentan ist er mit den Jungs von 2K hier in Deutschland unterwegs, um den kürzlich erschienenen Taktik-Shooter XCOM The Burrow zu promoten. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you.
It's nice having you here.
Thank you.
I briefly introduced you to the guys in German, but let's hear from you in a little bit more detail. What exactly do you do and did you do?
Well, I worked for the British government for 21 years at the Ministry of Defence, and between 1991 and 1994 I had to investigate all UFO sightings reported to the government and determine whether there was evidence of any potential threat or of something of more general scientific interest.
So how do you explain it then? You said more general scientific interest. So how did you start there at the British government?
Well, I had joined pretty much straight out of college, and I had done a number of different jobs. They move you around quite a lot. And then suddenly, in 1991, they said to me, we have a new job we would like you to take. And I said, what job? What is it? And they said, UFOs.
Oh, so you weren't exactly prepared then, right?
No, to me,
okay.
This was a complete surprise. I had no particular interest in the subject. I had no strong beliefs. So it was a huge shock, but I knew it was going to be interesting.
Okay, so there hasn't been a certain event that triggered that you did those UFO projects, right?
No, the British government had first started investigating back in 1950. So over the years, many different people had that job.
Awesome, and you did do that UFO stuff for 3 years, then,
yes.
Right? All right, I was wondering about that. So how's your average work day been like? I mean, especially in those 3 years, I was wondering how exactly do you do the research for stuff like that, and how did you get from a little bit more skeptical to maybe a little bit more convinced?
Well, the first thing I would do each morning, after I'd had my coffee, was to go through any reports that had come through in the night. And obviously quite a lot of the reports were nighttime ones. And then I would start my investigations, and I would take the description, the time and location, and I would see if I could find something like military activity or something to do with astronomical phenomena that might explain what people had seen. And then I would ask the RAF, the Air Force, about radar tapes, and if we had a photograph or a video, we would get that analysed by the technical intelligence specialist, and I would try to do that. But you know, in any day I could get questions from the media might come in, letters from the public. I might even get school children doing a project on the subject and asking if I could help.
So basically it's a little bit of comparing data and a little bit of doing PR work. That's what it sounds to me like.
Yes, and also in all of that I was trying as well to research the subject more generally by going back through some of the tens of thousands of pages of documents going back many years to see if patterns were maybe there that people had missed, and to try and compare what we had in our archives maybe with other countries.
So you said that there were hundreds and thousands of pages, and I read that to this day a lot of them are available for the public to actually look at them. But it's a lot to read, and so I don't want to put our viewers into the position where they have to read everything. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what would have been the most interesting or exciting documents of those.
Well, you're right. The British government has just finished a 5-year program to declassify and release as many of these files as possible, and there are over 50,000 pages. So yes, to save your viewers going through all that, I think the most interesting one is a classified study called Project Condign, and the Defence Intelligence staff at the Ministry of Defence tried to basically say, never mind all these individual cases, 200 or 300 sightings that we investigated each year. What do we think of it all together? What after all these years, what do we really know, and what do we think? And they came to some extraordinary conclusions and thought that whatever UFOs might be, and this is, I think, the bit that's really interesting, and the media didn't notice this when it was released because there was too many pages.
Could you give us a sneak peek? What's inside?
Yes, the really fascinating and quite disturbing thing is that they said whatever these UFOs turn out to be, the technology maybe we could use in terms of energy sources, propulsion systems, but here's the thing, weapons. We were the Ministry of Defence, and I'm afraid the thinking was always, can we make a weapon out of any of this?
Can we use
a death ray, effectively, a directed energy weapon, as they called it.
Oh wow, that sounds really disturbing.
Yes, and it's now been declassified, so people can find it. But you know, there's an old saying: the best place to hide a book is in a library. With all those thousands of documents, people miss good stuff like that.
So now they have an inside scoop. I'm interested in what exactly do you personally believe? You know, there's is a possibility, just with the sheer amount of planets and everything, and the probable UFO sightings. What do you personally believe, that there is more life than the human race?
I'm convinced that there's life elsewhere in the universe because the physics and the chemistry should be constant throughout the universe, and the laws of physics don't change. So the same things that gave rise to life here should happen out there too. Now, whether we're being visited by any of that life is a different question, and I am undecided about that. But you know, I'm less skeptical than I was when I started my government work on this, because so many of these sightings, I think, of course, did turn out to be just aircraft lights and weather balloons, but where we had these things seen by police officers, military personnel, pilots, where they were tracked on radar, there are some really intriguing cases there. I've
read that you said that about 5% of those sightings are unexplained and you don't really know the causes of it. And you also said that there are some fascinating clues that aliens might exist. Can you tell us a little bit more about those clues?
Well, I think it's probably where we have, for example, something that is maybe seen by a pilot and simultaneously tracked on radar. If that object is seen and it's clearly a craft of some sort, well, someone made it. Now, you could say maybe it's the Russians, maybe it's a new spy plane or a drone, and that, of course, is one possibility. But you know, when these things do speeds and maneuvers that seem, you know, so far ahead of anything we can manage, that it almost seems impossible to conceive that this is some new Russian or American spy plane or something. So
I think it's really hard to explain it if more than one person saw it, you know?
That's another, yes, absolutely. And one of my favorite cases from 1993 involved hundreds of people in the UK who saw a UFO for over a period of about 6 hours. And it flew directly over 2 Air Force bases.
And there hasn't been an explanation?
No explanation. One of the Air Force officers told me this thing was a huge triangular-shaped craft, moved very slowly, and then it shot away to the horizon.
The Rendlesham Forest case, right?
No, that's a different case.
Oh, that's a different case. I saw the pictures of the triangular aircraft as well.
Well, that's triangular too, but the Rendlesham case was a smaller triangle, but that, you're right, that's Britain's most famous, I think, and most compelling UFO case. And of course this thing wasn't just seen in the sky, but it was seen by lots of military witnesses, and some of them saw it land.
Awesome. Wow, I think it's really weird if you see something like that. Did you see something of that yourself, like an UFO landing, or?
Sadly, I have never seen a UFO myself.
A really compelling picture, maybe. It's just always so blurry. But did you see a picture that was really, like, really detailed, and where you really could see, okay, it could be a flying saucer, maybe?
There was one picture that my predecessor had acquired in 1990, and there was a big poster-sized copy of it on my office wall, and it was a diamond-shaped silver metallic craft, which the intelligence specialists had said was maybe 25 meters in diameter, and nobody knew what was keeping it up in the air. There was no visible wings or propulsion system.
Did you find an explanation?
No. And for all the conspiracy theorists out there, I'm afraid that when the Ministry of Defense declassified the files, those photographs had disappeared.
Oh, wow. So do you believe it's all a conspiracy, like British government or other governments, like, covering everything up?
Well, I think we were naturally secretive about UFOs. And of course the Ministry of Defense was a naturally secretive organization anyway. But whether it was a deliberate attempt to stop people seeing these photographs, or whether it was just a mistake, you know, people lose documents sometimes.
Of course.
I don't know, but I can see why people are suspicious.
What I was wondering about is, in May, I have to read the names, the former Defense Minister of Canada, he said that the government is working alongside with alien races like Reticuli and Pleiadia. I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, but what do you think of that statement? Do you remember that?
Yes, and indeed I've met Paul Hellyer, and we've discussed this on several occasions. He absolutely believes this. Now, I should say that he is saying that on the basis of things that he's been told by other people. So sometimes it's maybe difficult to verify whether those people are being truthful with him, or whether they were in a position to know. But he's, of course, as the former Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister of Canada, he's got his own military and intelligence and government contacts. So yeah, it's a very interesting claim.
So why do you think he's actually coming forward now in claiming that?
Well, I think he believes passionately, I know from my discussions with him, that people have a right to know. He's a great supporter of freedom of information and open government.
I think that's awesome. So what I was wondering, let's assume there is an alien contact somewhere and sometime in the future, and everybody will know about it. In what position would you see yourself actually, like maybe an ambassador or more of a silent viewer?
Well, I suppose because I have been involved in this subject for the government, I would like to be involved in some way. Whether I would be acting as a go-between, or whether it would probably be people like Stephen Hawking, maybe. I don't know. But perhaps, given that I talk about this subject quite a lot on television and on the radio, maybe I would have some sort of a role as somebody who would maybe reassure people. Well, as long as we're not being invaded by them. But if the aliens are friendly, then maybe my role, it would be nice for me to come and explain to people who these visitors are.
Kind of a spokesperson, a contact person between the alien race and the humans, basically.
Yes, maybe.
Do you also know, just to go a little bit further away from the topic, do you also know, do you have a favorite alien movie, or do you have a movie where you say this is a really realistic approach to alien races?
I rather like the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, and that's based on some real science of using radio telescopes to listen for alien signals. And I think what's nice about that is that, in a sense, it's not really a movie about aliens. It's about us and how we would react, both as a society and individually. What would it do to people's personal worldview, their religious faith, if they have it? So many interesting questions.
And you also go around the world and hold lectures and talks about all that. Has there been any specific question that you were really surprised by, like a really weird question?
Well, one question that comes up a lot, which I was very surprised the first time I was asked. Somebody said to me, have you really left the government, or are you still secretly working for them? And some people believe that my job is to maybe acclimatize people to this, and when they see me working on games such as The Bureau, many people think that computer games and movies are being secretly used by the government to get people used to the idea of aliens.
I've heard of people saying that.
Yeah, so when I was first asked this, I was very surprised, and somebody said, "You're not really working, you know, are you? Or are you still secretly on the payroll of the Ministry of Defence?" And I get that a lot.
Question, really.
Yeah, and I find myself at the centre of my own little conspiracy theory, I guess.
It's an interesting conspiracy theory. Our viewers were discussing under the video that we did about conspiracy theories, about many other conspiracy theories, and what they were also really interested in is 9/11 being an inside job. What's your take on that?
Well, I am very unpopular with the conspiracy theory community because I don't believe that that was a conspiracy, aside from the fact that it was a conspiracy from Al-Qaeda. I think everything that looks strange about that has actually, to me, a conventional explanation. I've seen many times one part of government not talking to another part of government. So, for example, we know that some of the terrorists were on the so-called watch list, and nothing happened. So people say, well, they must have known. No, what actually happened is the FBI didn't tell the CIA, because the FBI and the CIA are almost rivals.
Almost in every workplace. People do not talk to each other.
Yes, and so things like that explain, I think, most of the discrepancies that people point to in 9/11. But we know that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda had declared that they were going to attack America, and indeed they had done so on a number of occasions. For example, the terrorist attack on the USS Cole, the embassy bombs in Africa. So it's not as if this was unexpected.
So you think it hasn't been an inside job?
I do not believe 9/11 was an inside job.
But you said that you're not really popular with conspiracy theorists, so is there actually a conspiracy theory that you believe in?
Well, there's a very good example that not many people are familiar with, but it's a perfect example of how a real conspiracy theory works. And it's to do with a bomb attack in Northern Ireland, in which I believe a number of people, including a child, were killed. And this was an IRA terrorist attack. And it turned out that the person that did this, planted the bomb, was a priest. The police knew he did it, the church knew he did it, the government knew he did it. But because there were peace talks going on at the time, they all decided that it would be better not to arrest and charge the priest, but just to move him.
Keep it quiet, yeah.
And now, years later, the papers have all been released, and it's quite clear everyone knew that this priest planted the bomb that killed all those people, and yet there was an active cover-up to suppress the truth about that. And it's the perfect example, because it's government, church and police all colluding on this, and yet so few people have heard of this great example.
I haven't really heard of it at all.
No,
did people know why he did it?
Well, he supported the views of the IRA, and he believed that violence was the way forward. I mean, incredible.
Wow. Really, I've never heard about it. That was some really interesting stuff that you told us about. Thank you really much for all those insights. And if you guys have any more questions, just let us know in the comments and we try to discuss a little bit more with you. Yeah, and I hope this was really interesting to you guys, and see you hopefully next week at Sach was.